Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Trainmasters office. It's me, Leather Jacket Guy. And today I wanted to do a speed build of a layout I've been thinking about building for a while now. I've never been happy with my current setup, so I tried to make one that I thought I would like in a 6x12 space. So, without really being able to test it in real life, without, seriously committing to it, I decided to build it in Trainz with a Z. So this is very much a speed build. This is about 2.25 hours worth of work, and well, I hope you enjoy. Something I did is I had the layout up in a SCARM, or Simplified Computer Aided Railway Modeler, which is what I use to do a lot of my layouts, or a lot of testing out of ideas for model railroads. So that gap there was me opening up the program and getting it all installed. I very much like to use Western Pacific track from Train Boy 1, if I remember correctly, as I both like the look of it and I like the ballast color. So, like any good model railroad, or really any good railroad that you build, we will start with brushstrokes. And if you're ever wondering where I'm getting all these dimensions from, I have the model railroad up on a second monitor to my right, so I can reference it and get all the dimensions I need and, well, basically make it as close to the prototype, if you will, as possible. This first section here is actually what I believe is called oh gosh, I can't remember it now, but basically it's a small interchange I read about in a model railroader magazine from, I want to say it was the 90s. I got a bunch for free. And as I was reading through it, it mentioned something about, well, every railroad should have a transfer, or a place that's, off the layout, that represents off the layout. So I decided to play around with that idea in this particular version of it. I have 12 different versions of this railroad. Oh, I forgot to mention the name of it. It is the Cascade River Railroad. I know it is super different and, super original, but that's just what I decided to name it for the moment. I've not been able to come up with a name either. It keeps fluctuating. Now, I wanted to make sure that the curves in the game were roughly close to what they would be on the layout, which would be 28 inch, is what I decided to dedicate enough space for. So how I do it is I basically rough it out. So I use the measurement tool, I scale it down to HO scale, which is something you can do when you first create the route, and then oh, right here, I was measuring for the river I wanted, and I guess I put that too close, so now I have to put everything in a different area, delete some things, and fix it a little bit. But I really wanted that 28-inch radius, as it's quite large, and, well, if anything doesn't work on it, you probably didn't have space for it anyway. A layout that's only 6x12 like this, you're probably not running the longest of trains, as I believe the track run, well, 12, 12, 6, 6, so that would roughly be 12 plus, so 36 feet roughly of running track. So it's not bad, but it's definitely not like the most amount, especially for longer trains with like articulates and such. And the Cascade River Railroad is kind of my own interpretation slash my proto-Lance Railroad. I like to think of it as running from the west coast of Oregon and running east all the way to Eugene, Oregon, where it would interchange with both the Southern Pacific and the Great Northern, SP&S, Northern Pacific, and all those James J. Hill railroads. And it's kind of the only way I can get the majority of railroads I like. I have a love for the Duluth-Mesabian Iron Range, as you might be able to tell by my profile picture being number 332, or Duluth and Northeastern number 28. So I won't be able to fit that stuff in with this railroad, as, while the DM&IR did have steam locomotives that went on loan, particularly the M3s in 1941, they went on loan to the Denver and Rio Grande Western. and they liked them, but number 224 ran away while it was over there, and the DNRGW decided to not pursue leasing them again. Even though that basically meant they did nothing during the winter where you can't really extract ore from the ground. Anyway, this siding here is going to be for a grain elevator, which will be placed later. And I tried to get the curvature to match a number 4 and number 6 turnout, plus the Y there, but you can only do so much, as I feel like when I have actual models on the table, they're not nearly as big as they are in Trainz, so I'm not sure if that's a me thing or what's going on there. And now I'm marking out the passing track, or the crossovers. I more or less just roughed them in, so I gave the 2 inches of clearance on either end to start the flexi track, as that's what I read you should do, so that's what I did on the design. And marking out where some other switches and stuff are going to be. And keep in mind, this table would have, this layout would have three ways to get around it, and one side would be up against the wall. Not extremely relevant for this part, but again, marking out where all these switches are going to be. Going back to the DNRGW story, 224 ran away down the hill because, from what I remember reading, I've never seen like an official source on this accident. I've only ever seen blurbs, so maybe I need to get a different book, as all my books on the DM&IR Steam never really mention it. But 224 was heading downgrade light engine when one of the main side rods snapped, came up, and hit both the air lines for the air reservoir, for the locomotive brake, and for the train brake as well. Now, I'm not sure why them all losing pressure, the brakes wouldn't automatically come on, but I guess they didn't. I'm not an expert on that. And the locomotive continued to pick up speed and rolled over on a place called Firebrick Hill, if I remember correctly. But basically, that was the end of the lease to the DNRGW, despite how much they like the locomotives and their all-weather cabs in the mountains. Getting back to, well, Western railroads here, this, again, it's my, what do you call it, kind of dream slash proto-lanced railroad. So it runs from the port of Winia, which is my fictional town on the west coast. That's kind of like Coos Bay a bit. A smaller port that was more important prior to the turn of the century, or the 1900s, back when you still had sailing ships, and it was kind of like, well, instead of going all the way to Seattle or somewhere fancy like that, you could dock at this port for cheaper port fees and get your cargo unloaded and save some money, but then you had to take the one railroad out of the region, which would be the Cascade River. Or the Cascade and Northern. I haven't really decided, but Cascade River is the working title. And it's kind of based on the Northwestern Pacific, as that railroad has its own interesting story, being partially owned by the AT&SF, the Santa Fe, and the Southern Pacific for a while, before the Southern Pacific sold their shares in, I believe, the 1920s. And then it became a solely Southern Pacific operation. It was partially narrow gauge, partially standard gauge. That railroad is whack. I have a picture in one of my books about it that shows I want to say it's a 36-foot wood boxcar is a station somewhere along the line. Like, we're talking, it almost feels like 3-foot narrow gauge, or just narrow gauge at times with how janky and goofy some things were. But I kind of based the railroad on that. It's just, it runs more where I want it to run. The Northwestern Pacific was California, Oregon. I wanted something that was further north to go to Washington State and Northern Oregon, where it's a bit more green, and I always wanted to be able to run Great North, the James J. Hill railroads were called them, Great Northern, Northern Pacific, Seattle, Portland, Spokane, and the Southern Pacific, as I believe it was the Deutsches River Valley in Oregon, where they did actually come head-to-head with each other between Harriman and Hill. But that particular area, the dispute was resolved, and, well, not much happened after that. I don't think that either railroad got complete control, but For some reason, that escapes my memory at the moment, but I kind of wanted something like that. That was kind of like the goal of having a railroad that was partially owned by the Great Northern, like 51% by the Great Northern, and 49% by the Southern Pacific. So that way, I could run Southern Pacific equipment or the James J. Hill railroads, but by also it being its own independent railroad after the 1930s, when the Southern Pacific and really many railroads sold off a lot of their subsidiaries that just weren't that profitable, and well, no one really thought they would go anywhere after the war, or at least during the Depression. So I can run ex-Southern Pacific equipment, or, have trackage rights with them, whatever. It's, again, it's kind of my get-out-of-jail-free card, put it that way. And over here will be the engine shed, but you'll notice, again, I start with very broad strokes, just putting in track, no scenery or anything. It's a good habit to get into, because that way you're not moving scenery constantly. But yes, back to the Cascade River. And then, so it would go to Eugene, Oregon, and then I've never really been able to decide if it would continue east to connect with, like, the Milwaukee Road or something, or if it would just terminate at Eugene and kind of be this, what I guess you'd call in the UK more of like a branch line or a secondary line. I haven't quite decided that yet, but it could have also just as easily gone north towards Washington State, maybe hooking up in Seattle and being like another competitor to the Great Northern. But again, haven't quite decided the entirety. Oh, excuse me. But I haven't quite decided the entirety of its existence. The main thing I know is that it uses oil-burning locomotives and leases Duluth-Mesabian Iron Range steam during the winter months. Even though that doesn't make nearly as much sense as it did on the DNRGW, we're going to go with it because it's my railroad. So, one of the big things that always happens with these kind of projects is I spent way too much time looking for the correct buildings to put in places. This railroad, since I have it mapped out, I plan to use a kit made by... Excuse me, I guess I'm tired recording this. I was planning to use a kit made by the Great Northern Historical Society of I believe it's a 20-foot wide, 40-foot long station, and it has a combined freight house into it, and I was going to paint it a semi-fictitious mineral red, kind of representing the Great Northern heritage of the railroad, as I really planned it out as like the railroad very much was owned by the Southern Pacific and the Great Northern as a compromise to get out to the West Coast. They both wanted to build the railroad, but neither one of them could secure the full rights, and I'll come up with some better backstory about some more shenanigans that happened. I would really like to make it kind of like a Raton Pass, where it's like when the Santa Fe just started building their railroad, so the DNRGW couldn't in that area, but again, I haven't quite decided all the details yet. Like, getting back to the model railroad here, over here is going to be a printing works, which there's no good models in the game of the Walthers kit that I want to use. I tried this one, but it was a little bit oversized for what I liked, and I mean, it looks okay as far as like per the era, but I really want this railroad. I really want this railroad to be I like the idea of it being between 1946 to 1951, as any visiting steam locomotives would have still been clean, and I could still run, Sherman tanks and a few other more, we'll say wartime loads, as they would have been coming back from the Pacific or various other places, maybe doing an exercise of moving. And again, you get the end of the 40s where there's a lot of 1910s and maybe a little bit further back equipment running. Sorry, I'm yawning way too much during this recording, but Yeah, you have a lot of prior to the turn of the century stuff still around, or maybe being rebuilt, um, selling off of 1920s stock, being replaced with Bud cars, and it's not quite transition era either. You would see some first gen diesels, but I believe transition is 55 to 60. But also, if you wanted to forward date the railroad closer to the 70s, it wouldn't be so much of an issue. Or if you wanted to run prior to the turn of the century stock, you could also kind of get away with it since brick and wood have never really gone out of style. So over here is going to be a feed mill, and again, there's not a great model in the game for the Walthers kit that I wanted to use, which I believe is literally just called the feed mill. I just realized you guys can't see behind me where I'm looking. But here is going to be a machine works, as this layout has evolved several times, and I really wanted to make like I really wanted this town, the Port of Winia, to really feel like it was in a cove almost, where it's like not quite dangerous, but like it's a narrow channel. There's only really one way to get in and out, and the railroad really is the only viable way to get tonnage to and from this town. So originally, where the warehouse is there on the south end was going to be a dock, but again, I just couldn't find a way. I just couldn't find a way to get it exactly how I wanted it, which is, again, a real shame, but... And again, the kit I would actually wanted to use, which I think is called the Water Level Warehouse, which represents a D&H prototype. I swear there's one in the game, but I couldn't find it, so maybe I'll have to go to a different route and find it, because I believe it was on the Hinton division. The C&O Hinton division one. I tried this boiler house, but it didn't quite look right. I found this goofy thing. This coal loader I always love, but on the west coast there wasn't so much coal traffic as there was on the east coast. I also thought about doing crossings that actually worked with like road vehicles and such, but I decided not to do that, as this is more or less a mock-up of the railroad to see how I like it, see how it plays. Again, this two-stall roundhouse doesn't look anything like, I would say, the Ironton one looks closer, but again, it's just something to put there to see how the railroad plays. You'll notice I tend to place a lot of buildings just to see what they are, and then I move them off to the side. That's a purposeful thing in case I ever want to use them again. I know I'm not a professional in using pick lists, but we'll get there eventually. I haven't done anything like this in, gosh, 2-3 years at this point. I mean, Trainz... I want to say it was Trainz 22 was the newest one that came out. Was the last time I made a route in Trainz. Here you see the oil burning part of the railroad. So, yeah, obviously oil burning engines need to be refueled at some point. I didn't have as big of a scene as I wanted to for the facilities, and I'm not sure why the oil dock has such a long, what do you call it there? Such a long spline, but it does, so you have to work with you can only work with what you have. And again, this water tower, not exactly the kind of style I wanted, but it was one that fit, so I used it. Again, not everything on this is all 1-to-1. I thought about using this Carson, I think it's called Carson Brothers or something like that water tower. Didn't have room for it. And then I tried that one, as I know you can get a kit of it, and I liked it. Oh, this little shack here. I love these little things. These little details make the scene. And I have these great northern, I believe they are 1920s crossings. Absolutely love them, but I wish they worked. They're available on Trainz Forge if you want them. And now on my layout, there'd be basically a road that's completely straight that goes from one end to the other to kind of represent both roads in the town and to the outside world. I used, again, these are available on Trainz Forge, these 1920s, I think they're actually Union Pacific prototypes, but I really like that style, and I know other railroads use them. I couldn't tell you what's different between the various railroads. And an oil dealer slash dock here, as it was just such a nice space for it. Now, I'm trying to find a machine work, or like a building that looks like the machine works. Again, no great one that replaces the Walters kit that I have that I was thinking about, so I tried this one initially. And I had to cut down the track there, but, and then I thought, you know what, screw it, we'll just put a boiler house on it, and we'll put it in there sideways, so it makes sense why you're still dropping off coal there. And now we go over to the grain mill. There was nothing installed that I liked, so eventually I opened up the download station on the right-hand side, or on a different screen, and that is something I love about, I believe it was, I can't remember if you could do it in Tane, but 19, and I believe you can do it in 22, having the game open, excuse me, having the game open and being able to download things and it instantly brings in the game so I don't have to keep closing the game is super, super nice. I did think about this one, I believe is actually the Walters kit, but the red one is the Walters kit, but it didn't work for the space I had it in. I thought about using the original RN one back from Trainz 2004. Not that I think it looks bad, and then that one was just abandoned, so that didn't quite fit the bill. And this is the one I settled on as, well, it kind of looked like what I was representing, and it was fairly small. So then I put the road in, and how I had it on the design brief or on SCARM just didn't quite work in game, so I modified it a little bit. And I tried to find something better for the printing company, but just, again, nothing quite fit the space or looked like what I wanted. Even going on the download station, I wasn't able to find much, but I did eventually find a couple of different models for a feed mill, and I tried this one, but it was just a little bit too big, and I just didn't quite like the look of it. It felt way too big for this smaller town that would be like the hubbub of industry, and then you'd have farms and such going up the valley into the mountains. And then once you get to Eugene, you obviously get to like the flatlands and stuff, so you would have cattle raising and such, or at least that's my understanding. So I ended up using this one, which I believe is based on a Lionel building, but I could be wrong about that. Added some more track to it so that it all looked good. I didn't put any crossings on the outer tracks there, which, if you're wondering, I didn't do that. I just didn't feel like doing it, and again, this is just a just to find out if the layout plays well. I did find this I think it's UR&N, or maybe it's the Utah Valley Railway or something like that building, and it looked kind of close to the Walters kit, so well, not really actually, and I didn't realize it's clipping into the road there, because I never fixed that. I couldn't change the track on it, which kind of stunk. But again, for testing to see how well this layout plays, it doesn't really matter. I was looking again on the download station to see if I could find anything better, but, you know, again, couldn't really, so this is what we got. This town, Port of Winnea, has gone through so many changes. There used to be different industries there, and, well, oh, now we get to one of the more fun parts, scenery. Well, mountainous and stuff. I really wanted to have a tunnel along the back of there to really separate the scenes, but I haven't done tunnels and trains in a long time, and I kind of remember why now. I didn't feel like trying to make one that looked halfway decent, and there was no true two-track one that really kind of fit the bill, so eventually I just scrapped that whole idea and just make it a valley. But here's the river on the other side of the layout. I don't think I ever put the bridge in on this side, as I was undecided about it. And not to mention in Trainz with a Z, again, I'm not sure if it's the proportions I'm using, but just it didn't seem to fit real well. I did eventually find a girder bridge I was kind of happy with, or not girder, I believe it's a truss bridge, a steel truss bridge 2-track, but again, it's just a placeholder since A, I don't really know what kind of bridge I want here, and the scene I want to base it on is actually a single track. Oh, here you can see me futzing with the various tunnels. And again, I couldn't find anything I liked or anything I was willing to spend the time and make look nice. And we're putting in some water or putting in the river, sorry, just to make it look a bit better and again get a feel for what it's going to look like. This part was also really hard as the track's supposed to curve off and basically be like a continuation of the what's it called? Transfer line. Which I wish I could tell you where the one I base it off of is from. It's one that I think it's in the film Conrail Hall of Fame. I think, I'm trying to remember. It was a railroad that had an F unit. It had an F unit and a GE 44 tonner. The GE 44 tonner got sold off at some point and is still around today, but I think the F unit was scrapped. It was a railroad that existed in the 70s, but didn't last much longer after the 70s, and it interchanged with Conrail. God, I wish I could remember. I want to say the paint scheme of the railroad was like red and cream, and they had 2 F units, but I can't remember, and it might also be just something I thought I saw, so keep that in mind. Yeah, this is where I show I'm not that advanced in this. This did not go very well, so eventually I just deleted it. That is, again, one of the annoying things about Trainz with a Z, is that you can't just put bridges on there like that, or you have to do some goofy things, and my spacing for my tracks is different from this bridge. And to be honest, just to see how a layout plays, I was not going to, do that much, and all the work you're seeing here took 2.25 hours. So this film is sped up by, I believe it's 400%. I lowered the water level because I just wanted to see if I could get a bit more depth out of the scene, but it didn't really work that well. And as you can see, I started doing some off the board stuff too. Well, I don't really know what I was trying to do with that. I really don't. I was trying to get the side here how I wanted it, but I wanted more of like a sheer cliff face, or not cliff face, just like a much tighter look. Much more like the rails really are just on the edge of the mountain. I like PBR grass. I'm a firm believer in it now. I really do like it. Here I'm starting to put down some other colors for the various industries to, again, represent how it would look on a layout. Again, I'm not sure if this is a Trainz with a Z thing, but it feels very close together. It feels much closer together than it does on Scarm, so I tried several of these rocks to try and get something I was semi-happy with to look like the side of the river I wanted. I didn't really have a picture, but I always knew I wanted to have a river and kind of have more of a rocky, you are on the edge of the riverbank. I think the texture I ended up going with is PBR River Bottom 01 or something like that. Everything you see on this route is from the download station or Jointed Rail, as Jointed Rail is very much our friend. Fixing track area here so that, again, I feel like it would look a lot better on the actual model, but I don't know. Part of doing a layout and making it look, part of, doing a layout or Trainz or anything, and making it look good is just giving it the feel. And by varying the textures, you can really start to make it feel not so samey, if that makes sense. A lot of the time I run into the problem where I use the same 5 textures, so everywhere kind of feels the same. Nowhere feels really unique, because like if you just leave it all grass, it feels kind of unrealistic. But by putting down, these varied shades and just kind of like some dirtier areas or some dirt areas, and taking away some of the grass more towards the industry and such, you just kind of get a much better feeling of like this is a real place. And it might just be, again, this layout's super small for this size. Making around the engine shed, trying to make it look like, it's a little bit more overgrown, like not so taken care of. Same here, just trying to add some variety and make it look a bit more like a real scene. And again, with the river bottom, I ended up using the river bottom as well for like ballasting in between the tracks and such, and just gave this area a quick coat as it turns out this area is just a lot smaller than it was in my head. And trying to find a tree I like is always difficult, but I found this one, so instead of using multiple trees, like pine trees and such, I just decided to use this one and slap it everywhere. And I must say, putting the trees on the layout really like makes it pop and makes it feel a lot more alive. And it also really made it feel like this is from Lionel Traintown. I cannot put my finger on exactly what, but it really feels like the... I can't remember what the map style is called, but if you played the game, it's the one that has evergreen trees and mountains in the background. Why can't I think of what its name is? Anyway, I also put some bushes around to give it just a tiny bit more depth and to not make it feel so empty with only trees. I'm not exactly the most creative when it comes to this, and again, I only used one style of bush to really get just the feel of like there's vegetation. And now I'm going to take out a bunch of these lines so I can actually see what's going on. And here, replacing the switch stands. Not something you necessarily have to do, but I like to do as it makes it feel much more like handcrafted, if you will. And also represents much better the actual style of switches I want on the layout. Those are US switch and signal switches if you're interested. I'm not sure where I got the switch stands that are like tall and short. I believe they're from Trainz Forge, but I could be wrong. I also don't know if they're North American, because typically I use the CNR ones that are way back from Trainz 2006. Because I think they still look good, and I like their look. They're very much North American. But, I can't recall which the Trainz Forge ones are, actually, because I know I have them installed, but I guess that's not really relevant. Here I try to fix the track again, and it really didn't go well, because the 2 spacings were off, and I didn't feel like putting that much effort into it. And I cleaned it all up, so let's get some cinematics.
thank everybody so much for watching, and if you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe. The route will be up on the download station as soon as I get around to it. And if you'd like to see me do more, please let me know, as I actually kind of enjoy these speed builds, or if you'd like to see something more detailed, I can do that too. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me in the Trainmasters office.